Back in early 2016, I was reading an article online by this guy, adventurer and author Alistair Humphreys. In it, he'd written that you could cycle around Iceland's ring road, which circles the country, in around about 2 weeks. And as soon as I'd read this, it kind of planted a seed, and I got really excited about the idea of the challenge of getting around the country by bike, as well as the opportunities for landscape photography that being in Iceland should present. And before I could change my mind and talk myself out of it, I just decided I'd commit myself, book flights, and then deal with the planning. I decided to give myself 3 weeks, which I figured should be enough time for some contingency, as well as maybe some side excursions and things like that. And then I just kind of started binge reading as much as I could about traveling in Iceland, about cycle touring, which I didn't know a huge amount about. I did a couple of trips before, but this was going to be 2 weeks by myself before a friend joined me for the third week. So I bought this, the Adventure Cycle Touring Handbook, which gave me tons of information about how to prepare for a trip like this. I stuck a huge map of the country up on my wall, started making spreadsheets of the distances I would travel every day, and really just then started counting off the days. The camera system I decided to take was this. Right now I have a Fuji X-T2, which is a mirrorless camera. At the time it was the X-T1, which is very much the same, just an earlier version. And it just gave this, to me, this sweet spot of really high quality and something which was a little smaller than a DSLR and not quite so heavy. Now I'm going to put links to a lot more information, including everything I took, in the video description. But right now I'd just like to get on with sharing the trip with you. And I'm going to split this into 2 parts because it really was like a trip of 2 halves for me in terms of how it felt. The first part will get us halfway round. I hope you'll come back for part 2 to see how the trip played out. Full of the nervous energy that accompanies the start of an adventure and a naive confidence in my fitness, I took a side trip to Thingvellir National Park. Leaving Reykjavik, it was harder than I'd imagined to find cycle-friendly routes. I'd later find out that there's a good map to the city's cycle paths that would have been really useful at the time. For 6 months I've been planning this trip now, and I've been looking forward to spending 20 days touring the country, stopping at some amazing places to take some pictures and share those. First couple of days didn't go quite to plan. I was hoping to set off straight from the airport. Thought there was something intrepid about that. It was a terrible idea. I should have stayed somewhere comfortable the first night, put the bike back together in comfort. It was damaged in transit and I didn't notice until I started cycling on it. So I had to go and, I limped into Reykjavik. It was just wobbling around all over the place. I was getting trucks tooting at me. It's not a very nice road to come in on. Really, I've learned some tough lessons already, but it's great. I can honestly say now, like, I've settled into this and it feels fantastic to be here. Heading north on day 4, I learned that you can't cycle through the tunnel at Valfjorda. The road around the fjord added too many miles, but a short bus ride to Cranes kept my distance as planned and I could rejoin the ring road nearby. The wind had been picking up all day, and as I got close to the campsite, a cloudy day gave way to the most spectacular sunset. I failed badly at doing a piece to camera in the high winds here, but I think I was talking about how you never know quite what you're in for when you plot these places on a map, and what a nice surprise it was to find this campsite in such a nice location. Rolling green farmland gave way to a vast lava field, as my progress north was slowed to a walking pace by a strong headwind. There was no campsite where I expected to find one, and I felt like a hot shower was going to do me good, so I cycled another 10 kilometers north to Seberg Hostel.
So I'm 10 miles into today's 40, but this wind is constant, it's just in your face all the time. There's nothing really to break it up.
Along the way, I found this small hotel where I stopped for a rest, and I noticed my face was starting to tell its own story about how challenging I was finding the weather. Day 6 was brighter, but the winds hadn't let up, with my bike computer telling me I'd averaged just 4.5 miles an hour by the time I camped at Blonduas. On day 7 my route changed, and I got a taste of what it was like to have it behind me, though I had to take care as I was blown off the road sideways a couple of times here. Several times along this route I met another cyclist. Her name was Annie from Portland, Oregon, and she was also cycling the ring road. As it turned out, the exact same article had inspired us both to take the journey.
We run about it from the start. Nostalgia is my second nature. My least favorite state of mind, but I go there all the time. All the time. Oh, I go there all the time. All the time.
I was now in a bit of a fight with exhaustion as I pushed on to one of Iceland's most iconic waterfalls, Godafoss, the waterfall of the gods at Fosshol.
I'm keeping up through lows and highs, and I see it. Why I'm alive, it's all for you.
So here we are, August the 1st. This is the afternoon of the 10th day of my cycle trip around Iceland's ring road. I'm at Egilsstaðir, where I plan to be. I'm exactly halfway around, but I didn't arrive at this town by bike. I had to tweak my plans a little bit. A couple of days ago at Fosshol, at Godafoss waterfall, which is an amazing location, I had a decision to make, which was a tough one, because it meant breaking up my idea of cycling the entire ring road. But what I was finding was that in doing that, in grinding out those distances every day to get to each campsite, it was actually becoming a different trip than the one I'd imagined. I'd hoped this trip would be about photography, about jumping off the bike, taking walks, taking in this amazing country, taking lots of photos. But what I was finding was I had nothing left at the end of each day. I was just throwing up the tent, sleeping, getting up, doing the whole thing again in the morning. Everybody tells you about the wind here, but nothing can really prepare you for it. There was one day, it was just 44 miles took me over 10 hours. I mean, I could have walked. I could have kept doing that for the whole trip and completed it, but I was facing my 2 longest days across the northeast back to back through a mountain pass, and it became clear that it wasn't going to be an enjoyable way for me to do it. I'd needed longer to have the trip that I'd imagined. So I looked at the bus route and jumped on a bus, which has given me back 2 days, and I'm in this amazing location now in Egilsstaðir, staying in a lovely cabin. I've been able to do some laundry, take check, just take a couple of days to get some energy back, and I'm already completely happy with that decision. It was the right thing to do. There was no medal at the end of this if I managed to pedal all the way around, and yeah, I just wasn't going to enjoy that. So I'm really happy that I made this choice.
This brings us to the end of part 1. Next I'm aiming to see 3 huge waterfalls and a lagoon full of icebergs, cycling the dramatic south coast back towards Reykjavik to close the loop. I hope you'll join me for part 2, and if you have any questions about planning a trip like this to Iceland, post them in the comments and I'll be happy to help if I can.